Good Wednesday evening. Welcome to Overtime here on WOTM. I am Gerhard Mathangani. We have a great show for you tonight. Once again, back in the house is Mark Everett Kelly. And on a Wednesday night, that means our Who's Better installment is back. And we have a little different one for you tonight than ones we had in the past. We've focused on football in the past. We're going to a different sport here tonight. Excited about that. Also, Alabama has announced another future game. We'll talk about that. Some news and notes out of the world of basketball as well. Also, we'll talk a lot of baseball here in our segment tonight with Major League Baseball. Some unknown players in the beginning of the season making some names and waves for themselves in the first few months of the year. First off, Mark, how you doing, man?
Doing great. Excited to get talking about. We got some great topics online for tonight. Boy, anytime we get a chance to take down or to maybe introduce some congressmen and some of the corruption maybe going on,
right?
I'm in a good mood.
Exactly. That's where we'll start. The NCAA right now is meeting with the Senate to talk about name, image, and likeness policies. Now, the bigger question and what's broader going on right now is starting on July the 1st, about 5 states and then some more states a little bit later on, but 5 states, including the state of Alabama, will enact a name, image, and likeness law that will make it illegal for those schools and the NCAA to punish schools for allowing athletes to profit off their name, image, and likeness. Starting on July 1st, it is Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and New Mexico. Other states will follow. Now, what Congress is being asked to do by the NCAA right now is to come up with a uniform policy for everybody. Try to come up with a uniform policy for everybody in the country to all abide by one law. And it's one of these things that they're trying to establish a fair and enforceable national standard of NIL. If you're asking me, they're doing this a little bit late because these laws go into effect on July 1st, meaning that something needs to be passed by then, as far as July 1st, in the main sense of trying to get something more universal set out by the NCAA. Let me ask you, first of all, what's your overall take on the name, image, and likeness as far as athletes being able to profit off their name, and what should Congress do if they're trying to establish something on the national scale?
Well, but before I begin about what Congress should do, I think that the schools that have the big advantage are the ones that are starting July 1st, because you have the 5 schools, which you have Florida, you have Alabama, you have California. California starts in 2023.
Right.
Mississippi, New Mexico, I think Georgia, they're going to have an immediate edge because they can start negotiating right away, starting in July.
Right.
Some of these 16 other states, or 16 states total, have agreed with a law that they're going to come up to allow them to negotiate. Some of them start as late as 2025. I know that's when New Jersey does.
That's right.
So we're delaying it in some states where other states are going to have just a huge advantage, because players are pretty much going to choose to go to schools where they can make money off their name, which they have absolutely every right to.
Exactly.
We all know schools make money hand over fist in sports, especially football and basketball. And you look at just the contracts they sign with TV. So I think that it's long overdue for that, because if you have a college making money off of your name and you're not, I got a real problem with that.
Right.
2 things really are setbacks right now. Now, we all know how fast Congress works, right? Give me a break. I mean, yeah, they'll get something done in the next 20 days. Are you kidding me? They can't even agree on what color tie this is. So I don't think they're really setting themselves up to help them out here.
Right.
So we're going to be in a situation where states like Mississippi and Alabama and Georgia, they're going to have the advantage for a little while. California starts in January. Those states, colleges in those states really are going to have an advantage. And I think that's kind of unfair to some of the other colleges. So why wasn't this done sooner? They were talking about legislation, back in February, back in December. And then how do you make it fair? I think the biggest thing you're going to run into is you have athletes in other sports like swimming or volleyball, or who work just as hard, who put in just the same amount of training hours and have to perfect their sport, because nobody, I don't care how much money a sport makes, if you're a wrestler or if you're a swimmer, you're working your butt off every day, going to long practices. You still got to go to class, you still got to make grades, but you're not going to be able to make money off of your name because you're really not that popular. I mean, maybe now they'll create different ways to market themselves. Who knows?
Right.
You know, I think that'll at least give them a chance to. But you might have some problems with those other sports. I could see a swimmer or a wrestler being like, look at this guy, he gets to make, you know, he's rolling in the dough here. Meanwhile, I'm busting my butt and I'm waiting online for lunches, you know, and he's going out and eating prime rib. So I think that there might be a little problem there.
Right.
But as far as the states having the right to make these laws, I think they're absolutely right to. I have a big problem with federal laws overall because I think each state deserves the right to make their own laws, and then people get to choose. But a federal law that says that limits anything, and I think that's what they're really being careful in how they're drawing it up, because they don't want it to be able to limit or say colleges come together and say, okay, well, we're going to put together this group so you have antitrust laws violation going on. And I think that's what they have to be careful of.
Would you be opposed to maybe the NCAA following the books, the laws in the books that are already in place in Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, and New Mexico? Essentially, what they have right now, it just makes it illegal for the schools, the NCAA, to punish the athletes by making and selling money rights to their name, whether it's a YouTube channel, whether it is a commercial dealership with a local town. Would you be upset if the NCAA just said, hey, well, Alabama and Florida and Mississippi and Georgia and New Mexico and soon to be California, all the other states, they already have a blueprint set in place. We'll just follow that. Or do you think that's opening Pandora's box and maybe the NCAA should do something a little bit more stringent?
Well, I think they're going to run into issues any way they do it.
Right.
But I think you need to give people the right to choose. People always should have the right to have the most creative ways to make money without anybody saying, oh, well, you can't do that, or you're limited with that, oh, that's not the way we do it. I don't think any of that should be. I agree that, you know, I like individual rights, people having choice, and really choice creates the ultimate competition.
Exactly.
And then that'll create the most fairness. That's what I believe. I mean, I might be naive in that, but I think overall, if you have everybody, that's the only way people can play by the same rules.
Right.
Otherwise, you could have people breaking rules like you're doing now. I mean, people are getting paid whether we want to admit it or not now.
Right.
So now at least there's you have the opportunity to do it legally. You have the opportunity to creatively use your name. And we're going to find athletes out there that come up with creative ways to market themselves and all that. And that should be all up in the air.
Exactly.
You know, if you have a great mind, if you have a creative mind, you have the ability to do that, more power to you. All that means is that people have the choice to do that.
Right.
I'm against not having that choice. And I think so many of these athletes were hamstrung when we knew that other athletes were getting paid.
Right.
So you already kind of had that competition. I just think now you might draw it more out in the open. But you know what? That's life.
Right.
You know, you have
Right.
you know, differences between people every day. You have the average worker and you have the millionaire. And, you know, people just got to learn if they really want to make more money, they got to come up with more creative ways to do it.
Exactly. One of the things, and I think that gets kind of lost in conversation sometimes when they talk about all the name, image, and likeness stuff. Of course, you're the star football player at Alabama, Ohio State, Miami, Florida State, Texas. Of course, that player will get more notoriety. However, this also does open the door for a soccer player that wants to use his name to run a camp over the summer and have, you know, parents of those campers come out and do that. A swimmer teaching children how to swim over the summer. And hey, I'm an Olympic swimmer, or I'm a college swimmer, and maybe that kid's also going to the Olympic Games, which there's a lot of collegiate athletes that do end up going to the Olympics because they can't make money there either. It opens the door up even for those a little bit more, less nefarious. So we always talk about kind of the big money, but I kind of think of some of the smaller ways. I mean, maybe you're YouTubers, maybe you open up a camp here or there.
Oh, yeah.
I really think that I love it for those reasons, and for those guys who, for the longest time, couldn't use their name to run a tennis camp or run a golf camp or run a soccer camp, and now they're able to do so.
And I think that's what I'm talking about. Is if you have you know, those athletes that are in sports that aren't making as much money overall or on a national level, or you know, don't have a huge contract with ESPN or CBS, they now have the right to go out and say, hey, you know what? I'm a talented guy. I have other things that I can do other than my sport, which is, you know, I have a business mind, and maybe I can create something else for myself, taking advantage of the sport I'm playing here in college.
Exactly.
So that, I feel great for those guys. And if you're able to do that, then they should have the ability to use their name to make money while these other guys do too as well, and use their own mind to create opportunities for themselves. That's what I believe America is about. You have the opportunity to do it. You have every right to go after it.
Exactly. I think that's 100%. And one thing is for sure, the clock is certainly ticking on the NCAA and now on the Senate and on Congress to be able to make these laws before this all goes into effect coming up in about 3 weeks from now.
Let's just hope that the Senate doesn't screw it up or Congress doesn't screw it up. Because we know once it gets into Congressmen's hands, that all of a sudden, well, what am I going to get out of it? How am I can I milk the cow? And they always got to get their piece, and that I am very much against. So I don't want to see them ruin it. I don't want to see them get their greedy hands on it.
Right.
I think that the athletes have the right to make their own money, and each college, each state has a right to make their own rules. I believe in state rules over federal rules anyway.
Right.
So I don't like that anytime a group of congressmen get together and try to make laws, I get a little antsy when it's talking about for everyone.
Right. Honestly, I'll give a huge kudos and a congratulations to lawmakers here in this state and in Florida and in Georgia and Mississippi and New Mexico who've already stepped up and at least passed something to at least say the schools cannot be punished. These players cannot be punished if they do use
And California.
Name. And California
Who knew?
does the same thing. And they kicked the can down the road and kicked it a little bit further out, which kind of accelerated everything there. Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, is one of those meeting with the Senate this week, trying to get something done on the national level. He spoke today about what the name, image, likeness rules in his mind need to inquire.
We urge that any federal NIL bill include 5 key elements. First of all, we obviously seek, as we all seem to agree to, a uniform national model under which students can benefit financially from the use of their NIL. Secondly, any provisions in this bill have to also support Title IX protections across all sports and provide for fair opportunities regardless of gender. Thirdly, we all recognize the need for preemption of state laws to provide the kind of consistency we all want across the country. And fourth, we need to safeguard the non-employment status of student athletes to maintain the core principles of collegiate athletics. And finally, as we have also heard, we seek a limited safe harbor protection to allow NIL opportunities to proceed without schools being under constant threat of serial litigation.
Lots of talking still left to do over in Washington, D.C. We'll see if they get something done before July the 1st. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll shift our attention to Major League Baseball. Lots of interesting storylines here in the first couple of months of the season and lots of surprises as well. We'll talk about it coming up next.